Dear students, in this module we will be discussing about waste collection. We will be emphasizing on collection frequency, collection crew, collection routing and transfer station. In our previous module we discussed about waste collection, where I told you about the components of waste collection and I discussed about the collection points, storage containers, their characteristics, location, and we discussed about the collection vehicles, where we discussed about the types of collection vehicles used for commingled and source separated waste. Now, I hope you remember the previous module. To have or brush up, let us start with a small introduction. Now, waste collection, it is very important. It involves collection, transfer and transport of waste from the source of generation to the processing as the disposal site. Now, waste collection, it is the first or the essential step in a waste management plan, and it involves around 50 to 70% of the total cost of waste management. We discussed about different types of components involved in waste collection, where I told you how collection points are important, then storage containers, characteristics, collection vehicles and so on. With this brief introduction, now let us look into the learning objectives of this module. Now, the learning objectives of this module is like we will learn about the collection frequency and the factors influencing the collection frequency. We will understand the routing mechanism which is involved in waste collection. We will also study in detail about the waste collection crew, their organization and their operating mechanism. We will also study the concept and significance of transfer station. We will discuss about the different types of transfer station, and we will also study in detail about the various benefits and problems associated with the use of transfer station. Now, collection frequency, it is nothing but the rate at which the waste is collected from a collection area is called as collection frequency. Now, collection frequency depends on a lot of factors like your population, income status, lifestyle and climatic conditions. Now, population is an important factor. Higher the population, higher is the collection frequency. I mean, higher the population, more will be the waste generation. So, you have to schedule your collection more frequently. Then the community also necessitates the frequent collection. Now, the requirement of a locality is an important factor. For example, a residential area might require frequent collection, unlike a commercial area which is having shops or other commercial complexes. Likewise, institutional and industries will have their own requirement. In a residential area, you should need a frequent collection because they will have a lot of biodegradable material and it has to be collected every day. Likewise, an urban area will generate more waste and it will require frequent collection, unlike your rural area. The next factor is your income group and your lifestyle. Then a waste collection frequency is directly related to the income levels. Now, for example, low income countries, they show low collection rates, around 41%, unlike your high income country which shows almost 98% of waste collection. Now, high income group, they tend to use a lot of materials like food, cloth, furniture and other used material. Also, their income favor them to buy, replace new material and dispose of the older one more frequently. So, this again generates more amount of waste in high income country and results in more waste generation and also favors more collection frequency. Likewise, these high income groups will also use a lot of packaging material which again generates a lot of waste, and this also necessitates more frequent waste collection. The other important factor which influences your collection frequency is your climatic conditions. Now, wherever you have a hot humid climate, that will require the collection at least twice or thrice a week, because at these hot humid condition it will favor more microbial activity and it will result in faster decomposition of waste. Now, when the microbial activity is higher, what happens is it will produce a bad odor and a foul smell. Also, it will generate leachate, which is a watery liquid from the waste material, which again necessitates more frequent collection. This is also applicable for putrescible waste. Putrescible waste are nothing but which has a potential of rotting much faster. So, all these waste will generally require frequent collection. Now, by doing so, by having a frequent collection, what happens is it generally avoids your health problem. Now, how collection frequency is influenced or it is related to your health? Now, frequency of collection is directly or indirectly is connected to your health of a worker or a resident. Now, the potential exposure of a household and a waste collector to health risk is higher. For example, here you have a lot of biodegradable waste which are there. Now, these biodegradable waste, what do? They undergo a faster decomposition due to microbial activity. So, if it is stored for a longer period of time, it will create a lot of health risks both for the household, I mean the resident, as well as the collector who is collecting the waste. Now, as I told you, now waste stored for a longer period of time, they favor growth of a lot of mites, maggots and bacteria. Now, this will favor faster decomposition and it will also release a lot of endotoxins which when inhaled it will cause a lung inflammation. Now, that is why wherever these biodegradable wastes are involved, you have to collect them more frequently. Now, how collection frequency is influenced by your storage container. Now, the requirement of a container will also determine the collection frequency. For example, if you have a small container, then the collection frequency is more. If you have a larger container, then you can delay the collection at least twice or thrice a week. Now, according to the population and the quantity of waste generation, the number of containers should be increased. Now, again if you have an open container, then the waste collection should be done on a daily basis, unlike your closed container. Now, again estimation of waste is very important. You should know the actual quantum of waste that is being generated in a particular area. If that is not known, then you cannot determine your collection frequency. So, inappropriate estimation of waste generation and irregular waste collection will always increase the overall cost of your collection. Also, you need a proper planning and segregation of waste at source. This will again it will minimize the cost which is involved in waste collection. Now, this table shows you the advantages and disadvantages of collection frequency. For example, if you see, if you have a collection or if you schedule a collection once per week or less, obviously it becomes less expensive and it requires less fuel. But the disadvantage, if you see, the improperly stored waste can create a lot of odor and vector problems. Now, this is generally preferred, like once per week collection is generally preferred for a cold or a moderate climatic region. Now, if you schedule your collection frequency twice per week, the advantages will be it will reduce the litter problem, it will reduce storage requirement. But on the other hand, disadvantage, it becomes more expensive and requires more fuel. And it is generally preferred in climatic conditions, like warm climatic conditions prefer collection twice per week. Now, more than twice per week, if you see, again advantage as such, it reduces litter, reduces storage requirement, but it is more expensive because it consumes more fuel and is generally preferred in places where you have dense population. Now, let us discuss about the collection route. Now, the route planned by a collection crew to collect waste in a specific area is called as a collection routing. A proper planning of the collection route will generally decrease the overall cost in addition to the labor cost, and it will also conserve energy by minimizing the vehicle fuel consumption, and it will also reduce the working hours. Now, the size of each route is generally decided based on the amount of waste collected per stop, the distance between the stop, loading time, traffic conditions and other barriers. What are the barriers? Barriers are nothing but railroad, embankments, rivers and roads with heavy traffic congestion. Now, they are generally used as a divider to divide the route territories. Now, the success of waste collection will generally depend upon the collection crew and the equipment requirement. Now, once the collection crew is formed, manager has to lay the collection route or plan the collection route accordingly. Now, if you have an improper routing, it will result in ineffective waste collection. Now, a route is generally laid after several trials of motion time experiment. Now, let us look into the guidelines which you follow, which has to be followed for planning out a collection route. Now, you should know the details of the amount of waste generation, you should know the collection points, frequency of collection, crew size and vehicle type be identified and coordinated. Then the routes should be laid in such a way that they start and end near the arterial streets. Always you should take care of the physical barriers like your railway tracks, bridges, river and embankments, which will generally act as your route boundaries. Now, these routes should not be fragmented or overlapping. If you have overlapping or fragmented routes, this will again increase your cost of collection through fuel consumption. Now, the routes should be always compact and it should show clustered street segment of a particular area. Especially when you collect waste in a hilly terrain, the routing should begin at the top and then proceed downhill. By doing so, the vehicle becomes loaded and it is difficult to be taken up uphill. So, always you follow a reverse pattern. This will also conserve fuel and it will reduce the overall cost. The pattern of routing should be such that the last point of waste generation should be located always near the disposal site. Now, again this will reduce your fuel consumption and minimize your cost of collection. Now, wherever areas having a high traffic congestion, they should be always visited during the early hours to avoid rush. Now, areas again having a large quantity of waste, they should be visited during the first part of the day. Now, one-way streets should begin at the upper end of the street and it should end in the down street through the looping process. Now, dead-end streets can be serviced at the T-junctions or intersecting segments. Now, collection involving both sides of the streets always require a long straight path before anti-clockwise turning. One-sided collection can be routed with many anti-clockwise turns around the blocks. If you have a scattered pickup points, then with the small quantity of waste generation, then you can attend in one trip on the same day. Now, let us discuss about the steps that are involved in establishing a collection route. First one is to prepare a map which will show all the point of waste generation. Then preparation of information summary table is essential. You have to have a preliminary route layout and then you should have a development of balance routes after certain trials. Now, these trials are done using a motion time experiment. Now, what do they do is a route map is generally prepared in such a way that the collection points, the garbage service location, one-way, two-way routes, location of the processing and disposal site, barriers, traffic congested areas, everything should be provided in the map. Now, as I told you earlier, these are done by motion time experiment. Motion time experiment is nothing but the collection crew, they will be they will set a time and the supervisor will monitor the time. They will see for a particular area how long they take to collect the waste. Now, this after doing repeated trials, they fix for a particular area, this will be the crew size and this is the time they have to go at this particular time and they can complete the area within this time. So, this is called as motion time experiment. Now, once the routes are laid down on the paper, they will be given to the crew for implementation. Now, with field experiments always you can improve and you can modify the route and this new route can be entered into the database and used accordingly. Now, a schedule is prepared for each route with details of location and the sequence of pickup points should be provided to the collection crew. Now, every truck driver who is involved in collection should always maintain a route book which he uses to check the location and record the problems associated within the route. Now, this information will be used in modifying the collection route. Let us discuss about the motion time measurement. What is motion time measurement? As I already told you, it is a standard procedure which is generally used to develop a solid waste collection system. Now, the time taken for the movement of the collection crew is estimated with the help of stopwatches. The time, distance, number of containers, everything will be tabulated and you can identify the best series of activities that the collection crew can perform. Now, this will help in determining the best equipment which you can use, how many workers and by which you can achieve good output, all these things can be found out. In recent times, people have started using video cameras and GPS to track this because by doing so, you can have a proper control over the collection crew and this will also favor the crew to complete the work within the stipulated time. This again will improve the credibility of the crew. Now this table shows you the details like how a motion time experiment is done. On the left side, if you can see, all the collection points will be listed. Time, arrival and departure time will be noted down. They will also note down the kilometer, number of containers which are involved, collection time, and then also they will calculate the trip time to the next station from one point to the other point, what is the time they take from collecting waste from one point to the other point. So based on this, they will also take into account what is the weight of waste that they are collecting. So with all these details, they will identify or plan out a proper route. Now let us discuss about the different types of collection routing. Generally, there are three types of collection routing. One is macro routing, the other one is micro routing, and the third one is districting. Now in macro routing, it is a process where the total area will be divided into routes in a way so that it will represent the collection of a single day by one single group. The amount of waste collected per point distance between point loading and unloading time, the traffic conditions will all determine the size of the route. Also, as I told you earlier, the barriers like rivers, roads, railway tracks, traffic signals, they will all act like a barriers to divide them into different territories. Since the macro routing balances the size and shape of the route, it is also called as a route balancing method. Now micro routing is like it will show a specific path, like what are the number of streets, how many houses are there. So that gives more detailed routing map. So this is called as micro routing, where the specific path covered by each crew and collection vehicle per day will be defined and identified. Now they will be laid based on the results of the macro routing. The third type is your districting, where when your area is large enough, for example, if you talk about a metropolitan city, it will be very large enough and one single company cannot handle. So in that case, what will happen is like they divide the metropolitan city into different zones. Let us take Delhi as an example. Delhi can be divided into 4 or 5 zones like north zone, south, east and west, and one zone will be given to one institution through tender method, and they will involve in macro and micro routing in that particular zone. So districting is when area is large enough and it is impossible for one institution to collect per day the waste generation. Now this will facilitate increased efficiency of waste collection when the area is divided into smaller sections. Now in the previous section, we discussed about waste collection. I gave you a brief introduction about the waste collection, whatever we discussed in the previous module. Then we started discussing about the collection frequency, what are the factors which influence the collection frequency. Then we also discussed about how collection frequency and the nature of storage container or health is correlated. Then we discussed about the collection routing, what are the different types of routing mechanism, what are the guidelines which you use for planning a route. Now in this section, we will be discussing about the collection crew and transfer station, which is the last part of your waste collection. Now collection crew. Collection crew is very important in a collection program. For example, if the crew is not properly formed, then your waste collection will be a failure. So the persons involved in collecting the waste from house to house, trucks, and taking it to the transfer station or a processing site or a disposal site is generally termed as a collection crew. A crew can consist of around 8 to 12% and it is generally headed by a supervisor. Now the size of the crew will generally vary from community to community, region to region, and it will also depend on the amount of waste that is being generated in a particular locality. It will also depend on waste generation rate, frequency of waste collection, collection methods involved, space between the houses, size and type of collection vehicle, and route characteristics. Now labor and equipment cost will also determine the crew size. For example, if you have all your equipments are mechanized, then the collection crew will be less, which will again minimize your labor cost. For example, we discussed about the compacted trucks where everything is mechanized. You have a hoist and tail system where the waste can be directly unloaded into the trucks. So in that case, the crew size can be less. We also saw certain small vehicles and muzzle powered vehicles. In that cases, you need persons. Same way we discussed about the non-compacted truck also, where you need more people to transfer or unload the waste manually from the storage containers into the trucks. So, such mechanized instruments will always, mechanized equipments or mechanized system will always minimize the crew size. Now, the crew size increases when the rate of waste generation increases. Less collection frequency will increase the crew size because the quantum of waste generation will be high per stop. The crew size has a great effect on the collection cost, which again leads to improper collection frequency. Also, segregation of material at source will influence your crew size. Now, implementation of automation in collection will again minimize your crew size. Now, let us discuss about the transfer station. Now, as I told you, collection is not only gathering, it also involves the transfer and transport till your processing site. Now, transfer station is your last component of your waste collection system. Now, transfer station is nothing but a centralized facility or an intermediate station where all small collection vehicles will be brought. It will unload their waste into a large collection container. So, transfer station is a centralized facility that is located between the collection and disposal site. It is an intermediate station where your waste from smaller collection vehicles are generally unloaded and reloaded back into your large vehicles for transport to a disposal or a processing site. Now, it is built in between the source of generation and disposal site. In addition to loading and unloading, sometimes depending upon the size of your transfer station, you can also have certain processing units. Now, processing units example, like you can have small segregation units, you can have size reduction or volume reduction units like shredders, compactors, balers and so on. So, if your space availability is more, then you can also have certain treatment units like your incinerator, pyrolysis unit, composting pits and so on. So, as I told you, depending upon the size, they will have processing units, they will have treatment facilities too. In areas with narrow and congested lanes where the compacted trucks are generally limited, then transfer station acts like a facility where the waste is transferred from small vehicles and non-compacted trucks and reloaded into large vehicles. The transfer station generally serves best when the distance between the collection zone and the disposal site is high. They also serve as a garage for temporary parking and vehicle servicing. The limitation as such, if you see for this transfer station, is it requires additional cost for construction of buildings and it will also increase the labor cost. Moreover, it will also consume high amount of energy for waste transfer, segregation and processing. Now, mainly the problem, another important problem which is associated with transfer station is like it attracts a lot of flies and other vectors, which and also it creates an odor problem because you store waste in the transfer station for minimum 1 to 2 days. So, again decomposition and lot of vectors and flies are attracted. Also, wherever you have this transfer station, you have problems of noise pollution due to the traffic or movement of these small and large collection vehicles, loading, unloading and so on, which generally makes the resident near that area uncomfortable. Now, let us discuss about the different types of transfer station. Depending upon the size, they are classified or categorized into 3 types. One is your small transfer station, the other one is your medium transfer station and the third one is your large transfer station. Now, small transfer station generally have a capacity up to 100 tons per day and they have a direct discharge station and they do not have an intermediate waste storage area. Now, depending upon the site characteristics and weather conditions, they can be either indoor or outdoor. Now, these transfer stations generally focus on a minimal segregation and they do not have any processing or treatment facilities. But when you talk about the medium transfer station, their capacity ranges from 100 to 500 tons and they are generally indoor or outdoor. Now, apart from segregation, they also have certain processing units like maybe certain small shredders and balers can be found. Now, when you talk about the large transfer station, they are used for municipal waste collection. For example, the waste that is collected for a particular city or town is brought there, then you need to have a large transfer station. Now, generally these transfer stations, the private companies, what do they do is they use it for a heavy commercial use. Generally they are constructed outdoors and you have both segregation, component separation, volume reduction. You also have many waste processing units like your incinerators, composting pits, vermicomposting pits and so on. Now, here before the vehicle enters into the large transfer station, they have to be entered, like they have to make a receipt where they will give all the details like what is the entry time, what is the exit time, what is the weight of the waste that the vehicle is carrying. So, all these details will be there, and that has to be filled by the driver who is bringing in the vehicle into the large transfer station. So, here in the large transfer station, after weighing, it is taken to an area which is provided with a pit or platform which is having a weighting trailer. So, from there the waste is dropped, and through the trailer, when the waste is moving, then segregation and processing takes place. Now, what are the problems of transfer station? So, site selection is very important. When you having a transfer station, site procurement is very important, because the site should be isolated, it should be away from a residential area, so that the problems of odor, flies and insects will be avoided. Also, noise pollution, which creates a lot of nuisance to the public, can be avoided. The second main problem is, as I told you earlier, transfer station attracts a lot of flies and other insect vectors. Now, this leads to lot of diseases to waste handlers as well as the public who are living or residing in a nearby area. The next main problem is the smell. It creates a lot of foul smell, because the waste is being stored in that transfer station for almost 1 to 1.5 days, maximum of 2 days. So, during this time, a lot of degradation or microbial activity takes place and the waste starts decomposing. So, during the process of decomposition, it generates a lot of smell. So, that is again big problem. Dust is another problem, because dust from these unpaved roads or wind or waste material which is carried off, again it creates a lot of chaos. Another major problem is traffic congestion due to the vehicles, because this acts like a garage where your vehicles are parked, or where your small vehicles bring in the waste and for transferring it into the compacted trucks. A lot of traffic congestion occurs in this area, nearby area. So, this again creates noise pollution in the nearby area or nearby vicinity, and it creates a nuisance to people who are staying in the nearby area. Now, what are the benefits of having a transfer station? One, it minimizes the cost of collection. Second, it minimizes the fuel cost of vehicles, and it minimizes the fuel cost of vehicles and labor. Then, by doing segregation, you can recover a lot of recyclables in the transfer station. It is more flexible, it has increased flexibility, it reduces the number of collection vehicles through large trailers, and it also increases the efficiency of collection vehicles, because they can transfer the waste and return back to work. So, thereby it increases the efficiency of collection vehicles. The disposal site can be chosen far away from the population area, where it can act like a intermediate site. Again, you can have opportunity to inspect and process the waste in this transfer station. To summarize, at the end of this module, we have discussed about certain components of waste collection. We discussed about collection frequency, how a collection frequency should be scheduled and what are the factors that are influencing them. Then we discussed about what is collection routing, how collection routing is actually planned through motion in time experiment. Then we discussed about certain guidelines and steps which are to be followed while planning a collection route. Then we discussed about the collection crew, their significance, what should be their size and how it plays a role in decreasing or increasing the collection cost. Then we discussed about the last component of waste collection, that is the transfer station. Now, we discussed what is the transfer station, what is its significance in waste collection. Then we discussed about the different types of transfer station which are categorized based on the area. Then finally, we discussed about what are the problems and benefits of transfer station. I hope this module would be of help to you. Thank you.